This is the holiday season, and Christmas will be here soon. Christmas is a great time to serve baklava. I don't know about other parts of the world, but here in the USA, baklava is a traditional Christmas treat. I believe it comes out of the Ottoman Empire, which is Turkey today. It's layers of phyllo dough with ground walnuts and honey and some citrus. It's a delicious sweet treat, and it's not difficult to make. So let's make baklava. My first step is to grind some walnuts. So I've got half a pound in there already. I'm going to add another pound. So I have a pound and a half, 680 grams of walnuts that I want to grind up kind of fine. I don't want them like a powder, but I want them fine enough that I can work with them. I'm putting a plastic barrier in there because my lid has all these places where stuff can get up into, and I put a barrier in there. It's like one less thing to clean. Okay, I'm ready to start grinding this up. This is probably going to take a few minutes. Actually, I take that back. Let's say a few seconds. That ground up very quickly. Beautiful. So there is my ground walnuts. Kind of has the texture of maybe cornmeal. So it's not a powder, but it's obviously not big pieces either. Those packages that I bought were halves and pieces. I need some citrus, so I'm going to zest the peel of half a lemon right now. I'm going to use more of this later on, but right now I just need half. And as I always say, this came from my neighbor's tree. Okay, so there's roughly half the lemon. And then about a quarter of the orange. So here to say here. The orange I bought. That's good enough. So there's my citrus. So there are my ground walnuts. To that I'm going to add 1/2 cup, about 3.5 ounces, 100 grams of granulated sugar. And then I have 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon and 1/8 teaspoon of ground cloves. I'm going to put my zest in there. And then I'm going to mix this up. I lined a roasting pan with parchment paper. This is a 9 by 13 inch pan, or 23 by 33 centimeters. And you're probably sitting there wondering, how is it that that paper is staying so neatly in place? Well, here's a little trick. See these little round things here? Those are super magnets, and they work great. You can even bake with them in place. They're not going to hurt anything. I'll probably, if I remember, take them out. But they're really powerful magnets, and they're holding my paper in place. Okay, so now I have to start building my baklava. Baklava is made with phyllo dough sheets. This one, he spells it F-I-L-L-O, but also P-H-Y-L-L-O. That second spelling, I believe, is the most accurate. They usually come with two packages rather, inside, and it's usually sold frozen. This has been thawing in the refrigerator, so it should be okay. I'll open this up and show you what I've got inside. Take this outer wrapping off. Okay. And then inside, there's usually a long piece of plastic that I get rid of first because I don't need all this extra length of plastic. And then, to show you what I've got here, it's very thin. It's paper thin pastry sheets. This is wheat. It's made with wheat flour. And because it's so thin, it dries out very quickly when you're working with it. So what I do is I get a piece of cloth. This is a piece of cotton fabric that I dampen with water and wring it out really well. Even use paper towel to soak out extra because I don't want it dripping wet. And I'll drape that over it while I'm working with it to keep it from drying out. I'm going to put several sheets, maybe 8 sheets to start off with, in the bottom of this pan. The sheets are folded over, but I'm not going to worry about that. And then what I have here is some melted butter. And with a pastry brush, people have told me, why don't you use a silicone brush? The bristles won't come out. I've had this brush for like 10 or 15 years and the bristles have never come out, so works fine for me. It's really delicate at this stage because there's nothing built up yet to give it some strength. But I'm putting some melted butter on there. And once I start building this up, then it'll start gaining some strength. Okay, and then I'm going to put a second one on there. I'm going to go the other way. Got to cover my sheet. Even though it's raining today and moist, I don't want to take any chances with my phyllo dough drying out because it tears really easily. And once it dries out, it's practically impossible to work with. Okay, we'll fold that over. So I'm going to do this with about 8 or 9 sheets to build up this bottom. Oh, I'm going to show you one other thing before I go any further. See, that's just shifting really easily. You have to be so careful at the early stage. And then what I'm going to do is, this next sheet, I'm going to lay this down this way. And by crossing the grains like that, I'm going to be building up some strength in that. So it'll be much easier to work with. And just to show you something, don't be surprised if it tears while you're working with it. Just work it in. Those tears will all be hidden inside. They're not going to make any difference. This is sheet number 8 going in. Okay. Cover the others with my cloth. And then, just to show you something, now that I've got a base built up, I don't have to be as gentle. Because now it's starting to build up some nice strength. You can just brush your butter on there. Now I want to put 2 to 3 tablespoons of my filling on there. That's good enough. And then add another sheet of phyllo dough. And once again, because now I don't have the strength of the sheets underneath it, now I have to be careful again as far as brushing that with butter. Once again, now that that sheet is buttered, put some more of my filling on top again, 2 or 3 tablespoons. Doesn't have to be too thick. Try to disperse it evenly. And then again with the phyllo dough. Okay, I'm putting my last inner sheet in. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to use the last of my filling. Just going to put that around by hand. And by the way, if it starts to round up too much on the inside, it's because you're not putting the filling all the way to the edges. So make sure you're putting your filling all the way around, even filling on the edges. And then that'll come in flatter. Okay, last intermediate layer going in. And all of the internal sheets, I did them all the same way, the same orientation. Because I didn't need to worry too much about building up strength. I'm not going to anyways. And keeping it covered with that moist cloth really helped. Very little problems with this. And another thing to keep in mind is if your kitchen is on the cold side, your melted butter might start to solidify in your bowl or measuring cup. Just pop it in the microwave for another 15 seconds or so, and that'll melt it again. Okay, I've used up all my filling. Now I can start building my top layer, and like I did on the bottom, I'm going to work in 2 different directions, crossing my grains to build up some strength. Okay, here's my last sheet of phyllo dough. I kind of timed this right, or planned this right, so I could get my last sheet to go on the long way. I'm going to tuck that other edge underneath. I'm not going to butter the top. What I like to do, I don't know that it's necessary, I don't want my baklava to be too crumbly, so what I like to do is just press it down a little bit. Not a lot, I don't want to crush it all the way down, but I want to press all those layers together just to help it to be a little bit more dense. Okay, now in the meantime, I'm heating my oven to 350 degrees. And I want to start cutting through these in a diamond shape. I don't know whether to use a spatula or whether to use a knife. Let me try a knife first and see how I like this. I want to cut down. Oh, that's working fine. I want to cut down through all the layers. And I want these cuts to be about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters apart, about like that. So here's my last cut going in. Okay. And what I wanted to do was, before this goes into the oven, I want to carefully butter the top. I have some butter left over, so I might as well use it. As I mentioned, I'm heating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 175 degrees Celsius, and I'm going to bake this for 45 minutes to 1 hour until it's nicely browned on top. And yes, lest you're wondering, I did take my magnets out. All right, this is ready to go into the oven. While my baklava is baking, I'm going to prepare the syrup that's going to go over it. So I have here 3/4 of a cup, 5 ounces, 150 grams of granulated sugar, 3/4 of a cup, 175 milliliters of water, and then 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Once again, some zest. This is from the other half of that lemon, and another 1/4 of the orange. And then finally, 1/2 cup, or 120 milliliters. If you do it by weight, it's 5.3 ounces, 150 grams of honey. This is just regular clover honey. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing this in a pan is because I'm going to heat this. I don't really need to bring it up to boiling, but I need to just dissolve that sugar that's in there. So here's my syrup. This didn't quite come to the boil. You can tell when the sugar is dissolved because that liquid under any foam that comes to the surface will have a clear, transparent, amber look to it. Here is my baklava out of the oven. And I have, in the meantime, returned my heat, my syrup rather, back up to the boil. You want to pour that kind of evenly over the top, letting it settle down into the grooves. You can hear how that's sizzling. That is hot. All right. And then you want to let that cool down completely before it's ready to serve. So there it is. It's a little bit warm underneath in the center, but around the edges I think it'll be okay. So I can plate something to taste it. This is where I'm going to use my spatula. Need to go down through again and separate it. I think what I'm going to do is take a couple of these corner pieces and save the nicer looking pieces for the photography. The first piece out is always one of the most difficult ones. All right, let's see if I can get one of these corner pieces out. Yes, nice. There's my baklava. All right, got to taste some of my baklava here. Yeah. Right away. I can taste the honey. I can taste the walnuts. That is quite good. I've made this before, so I know what it tastes like. In the meantime, I've made a cup of coffee. Two go perfect together. So excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy my afternoon snack of coffee with homemade baklava. To view the recipe and download a PDF version with step-by-step photographs, click the Jump to Recipe icon in the lower right corner or visit my website, mobilehomegourmet.com.